you finished fixing your hat?
No, I don't like the way it's looking.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the Buckets and Tea NBA show. I'm your host, Cathryn Naiker. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Joining me, perpetually and never-ending fixing his hat. You know him, you love him. It's Oren Weisfeld. How you doing?
Never happy, never satisfied. Just the same old with me. But no, thanks for having me. I'm doing well. Came back from the Pascal return game yesterday, which was pretty hype, even though the Raptors lost. And yeah, there's a lot going on in the NBA right now, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm always happy to have you on. First of all, we have to congratulate you because it was announced earlier today that you are writing a book. Tell us about it.
It was announced. Yeah. So I'm writing a book. It's about the growth of Canadian men's basketball. It's with ECW Press. I've known about it for a while, but I'm excited to put it out into the ether finally because it's been a long process. But yeah, I mean, I've been covering Canadian basketball and the men's team for a while now. So this is kind of the culmination of all that, and I want to kind of tell the whole overarching story of how we got here to be one of the most, well represented countries in the NBA, to have this team that's now going to the Paris Olympics, and there's a lot of factors that went into this kind of balloon of talent, and I'm excited to tell that story. So it'll be available in fall of 2025, but you can follow me on Twitter at Oren Weisfeld if you want to keep up to date, where I will be shamelessly plugging this book for the next year of my life.
Well, yeah, as you should. So are you going to get to go to Paris?
No.
Come on.
I know.
You got to convince them.
It's very disappointing.
You have to convince your publisher to send you to Paris. How could you not be there? You're not going to write. Like, you got to be there.
I know. Trust me. I've done everything I can. My publisher has no sway here. It's all about the COC, the Canadian Olympic Committee, and they don't care about books. Essentially, is the bulk of the story.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm never gonna say never. I'm definitely still trying to go to Paris, but as of right now, it's not looking great. But that's okay. This is
I would think Paris. You would have it by now if you were going.
Yeah, exactly. But like, you're right. Like, it seems silly not to be there. But at the end of the day, the Paris part of it is only like the very end of this story. And the last 25 years,
the climax, if you will.
It is the climax. Yes. Yeah. But the last 25 years of history is bigger than that. So, it'll be a good book regardless of if I'm in Paris or not.
Listen,
but I'll do everything I can.
No question, it'll be an amazing book. And you can also like interview so many of these players as they're in town, on their respective NBA teams. So there's no doubt it'll be a great book. I just want you to be in Paris.
I want to be there too.
Because I'm not going to Paris.
Yeah.
So somebody I know should go.
Yeah. Paris would be sick. I've always wanted to go to an Olympics.
I've always wanted to go to an Olympics. A summer Olympics, preferably.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to be bougie and fun. Anyway.
They got good food in Paris.
Yeah. It's just, we just got to start the narrative. That's where, you know what I mean? Like, we just start it now. And we get all the other like Raptors people like tweeting like Oren to Paris. Hashtag Oren to Paris.
I mean, I'm ready if you are.
All right. I am. Don't think I won't. My Twitter account is very low stakes. But don't think I won't. All right, let's jump into some basketball stuff. We're gonna do NBA first, and then all the latest with the Raptors, including Pascal's return and more. Let's start off with what I'm just gonna fully off the top call an absolute bogus story, and I'll say why. And that is the Warriors were trying to get LeBron James at the trade deadline. So ESPN's Ramon Shelbourne released the story that the Warriors were trying to get LeBron James. Rich Paul confirmed that it's true. However, LeBron is happy in LA. I am considering this a bogus story because, in my humble opinion, I don't think as a GM you're doing your job if you don't know what it takes to get any respective superstar on any team. Like, your job is to know what these packages are. And it's like, to me, what would be a real story is if the Lakers were considering trading LeBron James to the Warriors for whatever. Like, to me, that's a real story. But to just say the Warriors tried it, come on, that's nothing to me. That's a nothing burger to me. This is a staged PR stunt, and I'm in a bit of a cynical mood today, so you can reel me back if you need.
Good.
I just
Good.
I feel like this was a publicity stunt. I feel like this was put on. I'm sure that
by who? By
the
LeBron's
Lakers.
people? By the Lakers? Okay.
Because I'm sure Mike Dunleavy Jr. made a call. Like, I'm not saying that isn't true, but the fact that it's a news story, I feel, was deliberate to ensure the Lakers fan base that LeBron is in fact happy to be in LA. Not that other people aren't interested. Because, he had the hourglass emoji thing that everyone freaked out about, and, all this other stuff. And, LeBron is, he's not exactly known for being loyal. So there's that. Or quiet for that matter. And I just think they needed to make themselves look good. Maybe if it wasn't put on by the Lakers, then I think it was put on by Rich Paul, but it was put on by somebody. Because it's just too weird of a story to me. And it's such a non-story. But it blew up and everyone was talking about it, which is why we have to talk about it also. But I'm going at it with my very cynical lens today.
I like cynicism. Wait. So this is a nothing. It's not even a veggie burger. This is a nothing burger to you.
Yes.
Wow.
Listen, shout out to the veggie burger. I have nothing against a veggie burger.
Okay. I do, but
I used to be vegetarian for a long time.
Me too, for 5 years. But
really, and you know what?
I've done my part.
I got so sick of veggie burgers because you'd go to a restaurant and that's all they would have.
Yeah, I do like a portobello mushroom burger though.
That's but I just got so sick. I was like, I can't even look at a veggie burger anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. Anyway. I think the way I read it was it's a PR stunt. It is a non-story.
Okay, so you also read it as a PR stunt.
However, I actually saw it from the side of the Warriors. And maybe this is my bias from being very critical of the Warriors' deadline choices, aka doing literally nothing, while Steph Curry continues to put up another year of insanity and is getting up there in his later 30s. So I read it as, hey, we're trying to get LeBron James. We're trying to do everything to surround Steph with a co-star. We're serious about winning with these guys again, and we're building on this timeline. And we're not just concerned about the young guys. We want to win now, and all that stuff. Like, they got it leaked that like we really made a push for LeBron at the deadline. Whereas, like, they knew they weren't getting LeBron at the deadline, but maybe A, it's like a long play. They can try to get him in the offseason. But B, I think it's like to Steph, hey, we're trying to get you help. My problem with that is like you could have actually gotten him help. Like, and I've been saying this the whole time, but like the Warriors should have traded for Pascal Siakam. That would have been a real way to help Steph right now, and they had what it takes. Like, they would have had to include Kuminga in the deal. They didn't want to. They want to build around Kuminga, or like they want to build around the 2 timeline approach and everything. And that's kind of where we are with them, it seems like. But like, I just hate that. I hate that so much. As much as I like Kuminga and I think he's going to be really good, I don't think he's going to be good enough this year or next year. And with like Clay, Steph, and Draymond, that's when you got to be good. So maybe this is like a Hail Mary to get LeBron, sure, but you can't throw all your eggs in the LeBron basket because it's such a risky play.
It's
And
a huge risk. I mean, he's
yeah,
gonna be 40 at the end of next year. Like,
right. That's pretty old.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously everything he's doing has been like unprecedented for his age, but it's like you got to figure like the time's ticking on this as well. Even more with him. I have a theory about the Warriors. And I think like, first of all, I agree with you. They should have traded for Pascal Siakam. But I think like when you look at that city and that franchise, it's so expensive, right? Like everybody talks about like their payroll being in the luxury tax and all that, but it's also expensive as a fan. You know what I mean? Like they have a lot of like high end season ticket holders and stuff like that. And I think, if their, dynasty is over, then they can't leave these high rollers with nothing. You know what I mean? So it's like that's another reason why you have to hold on to somebody like Kaminga, and even like now like Brandon Pachemsky is, doing well for them and all that, because it's like you have to give that fan base somebody to be excited about. And it's like if you
Yeah.
roll the dice on Siakam and then that era ends and then you're like completely rebuilding from scratch, it's like you're not going to be making the money that you need to make to, compensate for this luxury tax and everything else they have. So I think that's actually kind of what it came down to.
Yeah, but you look at the Clippers who have gone in the opposite direction. Like they don't have a first round pick of their own until 2031
Mhm.
because they've just gone all in on this core. And they're also building a new stadium, like I wrote about this recently. And it's like
Mhm.
super risky, of course. And the fan base, when those guys retire, is probably in for some dire years. But ultimately, you don't like, I just don't believe in like a two timeline approach. Like, you're never going to get a Kawhi Leonard or a Steph Curry again. Those are once in a generation players. So when you have them, you have to do everything you can to give them the best odds of winning a championship. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like, I get it, though. Like what I'm asking them to do in terms of trading Kaminga for a Siakam would like leave the franchise in a bad state. But it's like, it's not like these are poor people. They can have a few years where they're not making exorbitant amounts of money. I'm okay with that. They're still
Yeah.
coming out on top.
I am too. I agree with
Yeah.
you. I just think that's why they did what they did.
No, I
Um,
agree. Yeah,
yeah, and
I
I
think
think
so
like with the
too.
Clippers too, like that's super interesting. I think like isn't Steve Ballmer like the richest team owner?
Owner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think him and the Suns guy.
Yeah, yeah, like they're kind of on another level of billions, but also I think like like a new stadium in LA is gonna make money. You know what I mean? It'll make money off of like concerts, off of sports, like beyond just the
Hmm.
Clippers. Like it's gonna,
Hmm.
but anyway, yeah, I agree. I don't think the two timeline thing. It's hard to say if it like completely didn't work because they did win in 2022. So I don't think it was
It's
like
true.
it's
It's
not
true.
all bad.
Yeah.
So it's like I see why they invested in this, but it's just, I agree. Like they got to give Steph one more realistic run. And I think they
Yeah.
talked themselves into this team being good enough because they did have like a 5-game winning streak recently and all of that. And they figured stuff out to a degree. Like they
Yeah.
went from being the bottom of the West to being a playoff team, in my opinion. I think
Yeah.
they will be a first round playoff team. I think their ceiling is second round, and that's
Yeah.
being extremely optimistic. But yeah, I agree. It's not good enough.
Yeah.
The whole Clay situation is like become God. I could talk about the Warriors, and this is like
Yeah.
for a long time. This is fully a Raptors podcast, but I just wanted to bring this whole story up because it was just wild and it was just such a bizarre PR stunt.
Yeah, but on the other side of it, do you actually think LeBron is gonna leave LA at any point in his career?
Well, when he went to LA, I think we were all under the impression he would retire there.
Mhm.
I think the only real factor is the whole Bronny thing,
Hmm.
right? Like if Bronny, like whoever Bronny gets drafted to, will LeBron just make, bully his way over there? That would, to me, that's the only real exception. I don't think like, there's rumors that like, oh, like LeBron's always wanted to play with Steph and stuff, but they're doing that in the Olympics.
I hope not, but
So
yeah. I really hope Steph doesn't play in the
I
Olympics
think they are
for
playing in the
selfish reasons, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but I think they are in the Olympics together, so that's like
Yeah, I think they will as long as neither of those teams goes far in the playoffs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which I don't think either will. Um, but yeah, I just sorry, now I've lost my train of thought.
You think he might leave to go play with his son. I think that's fair.
Oh, this is the one last point I wanted to make about it. Is okay, this is just another like, theory that I have. So do you remember back when, after Kobe tore his Achilles and the Lakers gave him this like huge like $50 million contract, even
Mhm,
though he wasn't like the player that he was?
mhm,
Anyway, I remember that being a big deal at the time, and I think the Lakers were trying to send this message that, like, we will take care of you at the end of your career, and
yeah,
this is a place where we want superstars to retire. And I think that was in part of the pitch to get LeBron in the first place. So I think that is, obviously, like, LA is LA, but I think that was also, like, a huge part of it as to why he went there. It's like, okay, this is going to be my last city and I can retire here and they're going to keep paying me. And that's what the Lakers do. And that's part of their culture. And that's part of like, Jeannie Buss's kind of stamp on the franchise. So, I would be pretty shocked if he left. Even to play with Bronny, like, I don't know. I
yeah.
think it'd be pretty surprising, but I think that's the only reason he would go at this point.
That's where I'm at too, and again, maybe part of this story was to put some pressure on the Lakers front office to do something this offseason, and if they don't, then maybe he'll leave to Golden State is kind of the assumption, but, I agree, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think first of all, Bronny's not even like a like, he might not even be a first round pick, he might not even come out of college
Mhm,
this year,
mhm,
so
mhm.
if the Lakers really want Bronny, they could probably go get like a high late first round pick for one of their players and draft him. And I think that's the most likely option. Maybe they draft Bronny. More likely they trade. They're gonna have 3 first round picks to trade this offseason. Trae Young keeps being mentioned. I think that would make a lot of sense. They go get a star and LeBron signs one more lucrative deal in LA.
Mhm, mhm. I completely agree. All right, let's move on. We've got NBA All-Star Weekend coming up, baby. Do you care? Do you like All-Star Weekend? Where are you at with this?
I mean, like funny story is like uh I I was an all-star guy, and, like, the Kyle Lowry when they made it the Elam Unding and Kyle took a charge, and I was like, oh, you're getting the best players in the world playing hard against each other. Finally, we got that for a couple years there, and it was just, like, great. I was all into it.
Mm,
I like the three-point shootout as well. Dunk contest is hit or miss. Some years really good. So, like, I'm an all-star guy, but last winter I was in Costa Rica. I took, like, a vacation during the all-star break, and there was, like, an American bar there. So I went there for all-star for the game,
mm.
and I was, like, meeting people as one does on vacation alone and just, like, 'cause I made them change the channel to the All-Star Game and everything, so people were, like, asking me about it, and I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, no, don't worry, like, the All-Star Game's good again, like, make the All-Star Game great again," you know? And I was like, just so, like, I had some people watching with me, and it was so bad
It was
last year
bad, yeah.
that I was, like, embarrassed,
Oh,
and I
no.
was like, "I'm sorry for making you watch this, like, this was so horrible," and, and now I'm out, like, I know they changed, like, the format a little bit to go east-west, but until they incentivize it in some way or until they actually, like, play hard, I'm pretty out on it, like, I I don't even think I'll watch the game unless, like, I see it's close in the 4th quarter.
Damn.
I used to love it, but the NBA gotta do something about it. It's terrible.
I agree. They do need to do something about it. It needs to be a competitive game. And, it makes fans more jaded when it's obvious that players don't care, you know?
Mhm.
Um, what about Saturday night? Like, are you into the dunk contest? Are you into the three-point shootout?
Yeah, yeah, so I've always liked the three-point shootout, and again, the dunk contest is, like, hit or miss. There's some years that it's really good, some years not so much. Last year, that was the best part of the weekend
Mhm.
because Mac McClung actually just, like, went crazy and I was really impressed with him and didn't expect anything. And I think, pretty good slate this year. So I'm looking forward to those events more than I am the game.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's talk about the slam dunk contest for a minute. So we have Mac McClung coming back. We also have Jaylen Brown. We have Jaime Jaquez Jr. and Jacob Toppin, not Obi Toppin.
I thought it was
Jacob
Obi
Toppin.
until right now.
Yeah, of the Westchester Knicks.
Nice.
So I believe that's another G League player. So we have 2 G League players,
as
well as a
honestly.
legit all-star, and then Jaime Jaquez Jr. So kind of an interesting mix this year. Do you have any personal favorites or anything like that?
They should have put Scottie in the dunk contest. That would have been fun. But I don't think he knew he was going in time to the All-Star. I guess if I had to predict, I'll go Mac McClung back to back. No disrespect, but I feel like he has more time to practice these dunks than the other guys. So that's who I'm going. But I feel like Jaylen Brown and Jaime Jaquez could both be great. Know nothing about Jacob Toppin. Absolutely zero. Don't know what he looks like. So can't give you much there.
I don't know what he looks like either, but he must be pretty good if he's in it.
Nor should we know what he looks like.
Do you think he's Obi Toppin's like younger brother?
Yeah, I do.
Obadiah and Jacob.
Is that his name?
I don't know. I assumed Obi was short for Obadiah.
Well,
I don't know. I just assumed. I think they could be related. And Obi Toppin, didn't he win a previous year?
No.
He was in it a previous year, though.
Yeah.
I don't remember who won.
It is Obadiah Richard Toppin Jr. Obadiah Richard Toppin Jr. What a name. Nice.
Yeah, I think Mac McClung, I'm not a betting person, but I think I would put my money on him again. I do want to shout out Jaylen Brown for being in it. I mean, he's the first all-star to do this contest in a really long time. And I'm happy. I feel like this Saturday night, and I want to talk about Steph and Sabrina as well, because the thing that really excites me is that we have people in Saturday night that are just not afraid of the moment. And I feel like for years we've had people like, afraid to be in the dunk contest and stuff like that. And like the thing that really impresses me about Sabrina doing this 3-on-3 challenge with Steph is like she is really like she's about that life. Like she's not afraid of Steph, and I think that's really like important and impactful that she's like, let's go, let's do this. Like the NBA releases the rules and she's like, no, I'll shoot from the NBA line. I like just the fact that she wants it so much makes me so excited. And I think, regardless of who wins or loses, there's going to be like just horrible discourse about it online, and I'll just do my best to avoid it altogether. But I love her competitive spirit, and I love that she's going for it. So to me, like, I'm looking forward to this the most.
Yeah.
I mean, would I bet on Steph to win? Yes. Because there's just a fluidity and a smoothness to his shot that is just, it's like beyond human. And Sabrina's shot is amazing, but it's like, it's like a Lillard shot, which is not bad, but it doesn't have that fresh crispness that a Steph Curry shot has. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I would bet on Sabrina based on just recent success because Steph has always struggled in the 3-point contest. And I was at Sabrina's last year in Vegas, and it was pretty insane. Yeah, I was there. Talk about a bad all-star game, by the way. Ooh, the WNBA's was horrible. Like their actual game they played even less hard than the NBA players. But
that's pretty bad.
Just like off recency bias, what Sabrina did in that all-star
was
in
insane.
That 3-point shot, I kind of want to go with her.
I think she wouldn't do it if she didn't think she could win.
Yeah, and plus, talk about practice. Steph's in the middle of a season. Sabrina can practice a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure she has been.
Yeah.
And she's younger, fresher legs, all
Spry.
that. She's more spry.
Sure.
Listen, I hope she wins. And I'll do a little dance and have a toast if she does, because I'll be thrilled. Any other highlights from Saturday night? Like, do you want to talk about the 3-point contest outside of the Sabrina Steph matchup? Damian Lillard is going for a back-to-back.
Yeah, do you remember who the runner-up was last year? Was it Tyrese?
I don't recall.
I don't know, but I'm gonna go with Tyrese Halliburton.
Okay. Very
He
cool.
got some good practice last night when the Raptors left him open for 5 wide open threes. So I feel like that's basically the All-Star. The 3-point shootout is just like the Raptors defense.
Yeah, I could see it. I could definitely see it. I don't know if he's gonna go back to back, Lillard. I mean, I feel like Tyrese is a really good pick. Donovan Mitchell, his odds are really low, but I feel like he'll do well.
You're looking at the odds?
I read an
man.
article that had odds.
Wow.
Here, let me pull this up again. Is it this one? No. It was this random CBS Sports article. Okay, so the odds are Lillard is the betting favorite at plus 475. I actually don't know what any of this means. With Halliburton listed at plus 550. Trae Young, Malik Beasley, Jalen Brunson, and Karl Anthony Towns are listed at plus 600. With Lauri Markkanen at plus 650 and Donovan Mitchell at plus 700. I don't know if Donovan Mitchell will win, but he seems like he'd get past the first round.
That's fair. I'm not a betting man either, but
no, I like your Halliburton pick. We should go with that. Now, I know you don't care about the All-Star game, but who do you think is going to win MVP?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh man. I think
it could be Shea.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go with him though because he doesn't shoot enough. Tyrese Maxey, no, he won't play enough. I don't know. Let's say Dame.
You think Dame's gonna win it?
I just think you have to shoot a lot of threes and you have to get hot, and that's the only way you win it, unless they start playing hard. So yeah, I'll go with Dame.
Yeah, that's fair. I usually don't pick an older player, like a player over 30.
Yeah, no, Shea could win it for sure. He just needs to shoot a lot of threes.
Yeah, well, maybe he will.
Maybe.
All right, let's move on. I want to do one more NBA topic before we get into the Raptors. I want to ask you about bold predictions going into the second half of the season. Even though we already kind of passed the halfway point, I feel like All-Star is always that pinnacle, okay, we're going into the next half of the season. I sent you a fun Bleacher Report article that had these list of different bold predictions, and I said you could pick from this list or have your own. So I want your hot takes, Oren.
I got some. I've been thinking about them all my whole walk home.
In the snow, right. No less.
In the snow, no less. Talk about an icy prediction.
There we go.
Okay, I'll give you one in each conference, kind of.
Okay, love that.
In the Western Conference, I don't even know if I'm going to pick him as my MVP, but I'm going to say I like the odds here. Obviously, we got Shea and Jokic leading the race, totally fair. But I think Luka Doncic he's my MVP dark horse candidate. I just think the Mavericks made a couple moves at the deadline. Did they overpay for Gafford and PJ Washington? Yes, insanely. But they got better at the deadline. They're on a winning streak right now. Everyone knows Luka's in that caliber. It's just about the team success. So I think the Mavs, Kyrie's healthy finally. I think the Mavs go on a run to end the season. The MVP is based on narrative. And so they go on a run. They catch up a little bit in the standings. They get a playoff spot. And Luka Doncic, I could totally see him winning MVP. So that's a little bold prediction out West.
I like it. With Embiid's injury, I feel like it's changed the MVP race. I feel like it's more wide open than it typically is this time of year. So I
Right.
do think, a
Yeah.
dark horse candidate could take it this year. I agree. Okay, what's your one for the West?
In the East.
Or in
Okay.
the East, my bad.
In the East, this one is just stupid. Because there's been really not a lot this year that would lead you to believe this, but I'm a victim of, history and I'm biased. So I think the Miami Heat are going to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Whoa.
I think they will beat any team other than Boston in the East. Milwaukee, Philly, New York, those teams don't scare me if I'm Miami. Because when Jimmy Butler gets healthy and gets right and is in playoff mode, he's better than anyone that those teams have, unless Embiid comes back. And that's not true. Giannis is better, but he's right there. He's right there with Giannis when he's at his best. They trade for Terry Rozier. Bam is like one of the best defensive players in the year. They have a good amount of depth. They have the best coach in all those series. And I've just seen it enough times. Like, I trust the Heat. And I don't think they take the regular season very seriously, to their detriment, but they're figuring things out. Like, they use the regular season to figure things out. And I've seen enough from Bam's development, from guys like Duncan Robinson's development. Terry Rozier is kind of figuring it out there. And if Jimmy comes back from this personal leave and everything fits into place, I could see them going to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Very cool. I don't think that's a silly take at all. I think the East is a bit more, I feel like Boston's kind of in a class of its own, and then everybody else is a lot more jumbled up. And yeah, it's hard to believe in Milwaukee right now, with all their inconsistencies and stuff. And New York, New York has to also, that's another team that needs to
New
get
York,
healthy.
New York, New York. Yeah. It's my New York accent.
And, I agree. It's another year where like Miami, they could take it. It's hard for me to be like, to me last year felt like such a fluke that for them doing it again would be pretty wild. But
Yeah.
it is in the realm of possibility. Um,
Yeah.
I,
It
I
would be
will
wild.
I will say my kind of like bold take slash icy prediction. This was in the article too, but I was thinking about it, is I think Trae Young and the Hawks are done.
Mm.
That's my bold one. Is like, I think like this could be the last year of the Trae Young experiment. And I think, in recent years, I just feel like the NBA always has some superstar that's unhappy, and it's part of the 24-hour media cycle that they have now. And every summer it's been somebody. And I think it could be Trae Young's summer to move.
Yeah. No, I saw that in the article too, and I agree. I think I could see it, and I think the Lakers would be my betting spot for him to land.
Yeah, it might be why they didn't move on Zach LaVine, injury aside. Um, because they could have done that earlier in the season. They could have made that move in December. But they didn't, because I think, they probably have their eye on Trae, which would definitely be interesting.
Mhm.
All right, let's move on to our Raptors Homer moment here. To me, it was a big week for the Raptors. Obviously, we had Pascal's return, but we also had, Scottie Barnes leaving the game early, leaving the bench early and going into the locker room. And it became a bit of a to-do. And then the next day, to me, which was more surprising, was that, the coaches released a statement saying that like they spoke to Scottie, and then Scottie released a statement saying like we didn't have that conversation. To me, that was more glaring than what happened at the game itself. But Oren, let me know your thoughts on this whole Scottie leaving the bench seconds early debacle. I wish I had a better name for it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the most alarming part was not necessarily the fact that he walked off early, but the way that the Raptors handled it. Because when he walked off originally, I thought it was like he had a knee injury that day, And so originally I thought like he was kind of nursing the knee injury, and they at least could use that as an excuse if they really wanted to get ahead of it and been like, yeah, Scottie wanted to get some treatment. Like they could have said that and there would have been no story here. Instead, like you said, Darko said, we had a conversation. He understands how serious it is. You can't do that. And then Scottie was asked about it, and he's like, no, we didn't have no conversation. And so it's just a kind of failure of communication. I think like as a coaching staff, your job is to make sure like everyone's on the same page. Even if that is just the messaging to the media, like that's a big
Mhm,
part of your
mhm.
job. So they messed up in that regard. And we were talking about this at the game yesterday. Like people will remember Pascal Siakam did pretty much the exact same thing. It was a little bit earlier in the game. There was like a minute left rather than a few seconds, but in the bubble, he walked off um, and
In
left the court.
the Tampa season.
Right, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
So he walked off, left the court, and then they suspended him for a game for that action. And it was pretty like controversial at the time, I think, because most teams wouldn't do that. And I think the Raptors were like trying to send this message where like if you're gonna be the leader of this team, you're gonna be our best player, you have to be, you know, exceptional, even not just like the other guys, but like an exceptional character. And it didn't surprise me that the Raptors didn't suspend Scottie. Like I didn't expect them to. The way they've handled him has always been with kid gloves in a
Mhm,
way.
mhm.
So I didn't because I think there's more harm than good in doing that in terms of there's a real risk of Scottie getting mad at the organization for that, and then it kind of starting this fissure that could get bigger. But I was surprised that they didn't make it a bigger deal and just like kind of admit like, yeah, it was an issue. Like it was bad. And Scottie say, like, yeah, like I'm sorry, it was bad. And just kind of address the issue. Instead, they kind of ignored it and just kind of wanted to move past it. So
Mhm.
I mean, it wasn't great, but like generally speaking, on a broader picture, Scottie's young. He's now the face of the franchise. He has all these new responsibilities. He has to learn how to grow into them, and that's going to take some time. So I don't think this was any like huge deal either, but it was kind of the first hiccup in the Scottie Barnes experience, I think.
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, and you can tell me if I'm just like in my feelings too much or something. The whole thing kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because to the way I'm looking at it, it's like, come on, man, like you were just named an all-star. It's like a really big deal. And I'm sure this organization like pushed for that to some degree for that to happen. And to, like a week later act like that is like really disappointing to me. Like I feel like, LeBron's done it. LeBron has left the bench before the end of a game before, but it wasn't because he was frustrated with his own play. He was frustrated with his teammates and did it to send a message to them, which I think has a whole other like connotation to it than if you're just leaving because you're frustrated with yourself or frustrated in general. I mean, obviously losing sucks. Nobody likes to lose. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I know he is young. He's only what, 22. But I in my many years of watching NBA basketball, there's been plenty of 22-year-olds who have been like the star of their team. Now I'm sure they had growing pains also, but it's just like I don't know. Like oh hello, what's the cat's name?
Joni, hi Joni.
Joni, okay, we have a visitor. Hi, Joni. I do love pets, so it's all good. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know what my expectations should be of Scottie. I mean, something I've been asking, on this podcast at the beginning of the season was who's the leader of this team and who's the vocal leader of this team? Because it's one thing to say Scottie's the best player of the team, but it's another thing to say he's also the leader. And so I don't know if he has fully immersed himself into that role yet, or if he even wants to be that person.
Mhm.
But I I do feel like it's a thing. I think it's a real thing. What do you think? Am I being dramatic?
No, not at all. And I was surprised at the trade deadline when they did the deal to get off Schroeder's salary, where they had to trade Schroeder and
Mhm.
Thad, because, when you watch games, you always see that three-man combo of Schroeder, Thad, and Garrett Temple sitting by the coaches. That's kind of your veteran leadership core. Those guys are the talkers. Thad was the guy who this season would always give the hype speech before the game started, even before he was playing. So, the Raptors have said we value these veteran leaderships, these veteran leaders, like we want voices in the locker room, yada, yada, yada. And then they go and trade two of their most important guys. So it's been weird in that regard, where they're putting a lot of responsibility on Scottie's shoulders, where he's shown that he's not ready as a leader. Like, just to be blunt about it,
Mhm.
he's not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right? Like, he's not the guy that like has those innate leadership skills and knows how to like get a young team to just like completely rally around him and whatnot. And so, I mean, Kelly Olynyk was a good one in terms of bringing them in. I'm sure this offseason they're going to do the same thing and continue to bring in vets like that, because like you said, like he's not the vocal leader of the locker room yet. And until he is, and I tweeted this, like, all you can do is surround him with vets and surround him with coaches who accelerate that process. But that's all you can really do. Like, you can't force the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point. As you were mentioning that, like, I was thinking about, because I'm old, I was thinking about the Vince Carter era, right? Because that was like a young superstar that the team was building around, but they had vets around him, and they weren't just vets. They were like Charles Oakley and
Mhm.
like Antonio Davis. Like, they were vets who were in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which I think is a difference. Like, I think that was very impactful. So, like, Vince wasn't necessarily a vocal leader, but he never had to be. And I think like that is important. Like, just as we're talking about this out loud, I'm like, yeah, like we need veterans, but we need veterans who are like good enough to be like on the floor with him throughout the game. So maybe that's something that we look at in the off season as well. I don't know, but yeah, definitely some growing pains this week. Anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think it's just interesting in terms of like, can you have a team where your best player isn't your leader? That's one thing the Raptors are going to have to figure out. Like, does Scottie have to become the vocal leader, or can you actually kind of like do it by committee and have the vets do it and whatever? Because I think a lot of people will tell you your best player just has to be the vocal leader or it doesn't work. Um, and Scottie will just have to kind of grow into that role, I think. And yeah, I expect them to like use some of those picks to like trade for vets. I don't think they're just going
Mhm.
to draft a bunch more kids and like let
I
it play
agree.
out, because it could be a little bit of a disaster if you do that. And again, like I argued with people on Twitter about this, because people were like, "Well, that's what OKC did. They just did a bunch of picks and look how good they are." And it's like, comparing Scottie to Shai as a leader would be like the stupidest thing you can do as a franchise. Someone was like, you can't just wave your hand at the Shai magic and like dismiss it. And it's like, actually, I do. I think Shai is like Steve Nash, like the type of leader you get once in like a long time.
Yeah.
And otherwise, if that's not the case, you really have to be careful about surrounding those young guys with like you said, vets who can actually play and command their respect. And I think Kelly is a good start in that regard.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. Let's move on and talk about Pascal Siakam's return on Valentine's Day. Is this one of the better Valentine's Day in Raptors history? I do recall Serge Ibaka was traded to the Raptors on Valentine's Day. That
Wow.
that was number one for
What
a
a gift
while.
for the women of Toronto, eh?
Thank you. Right? It was.
Yeah.
It felt like a real gift.
Yeah.
Maybe that will always be number one, but this is a close second, if not number one as well. Were you were at the game last night?
Yeah.
We're recording this on Thursday. It'll be out Friday. Tell us about the game. What was the experience like being there?
It was really cool. Like, there was this moment where I don't know how much was caught on TV, but I guess probably not much, but when they were doing the national anthem, which the TV doesn't, they usually record other stuff over that. the Jumbotron kept panning to Pascal during the Canadian national anthem, and every time it panned to him, the crowd would just start cheering during the national anthem, and Pascal just kept, like, smiling, but he was trying to hold a straight face because it was the national anthem, but he also knew he was on the Jumbotron and people were clapping, so there was, like it was really cool that just, like, kept happening and people just, like, kept cheering for him, and he kept, like, trying not to smile, but, like, you could see him fighting it, and then after that, they did the video tribute, and there was, like, a long standing ovation, and then he was, like, motioning, like, "I'm not crying, like, I'm not crying." But he was close, so we
Yeah,
almost made him
yeah.
cry. Um, so it was really cool. The one maybe bone I had to pick with it was, like, I'm sure you read his Players Tribune article where he said, like, he used to look during the national anthem for his jerseys, and he didn't see any, and then he started seeing more and more pop up, and he was like, "I hope when I come back to Toronto, people will still be wearing his jerseys," and I'm sure a lot of Raptors fans read it, and I'm sure a lot of them were planning to wear his jerseys to the game.
Mhm.
But what the Raptors did was they gave, like, a whole section of fans, I don't know if you saw this,
I did see this.
Pascal jerseys, and it looked cool in the photos, but I wish it was just a more natural thing of, like, "Look,
Mhm.
hundreds of people are gonna wear his jersey to the game. Let that be, like, the natural experience of what happens rather than, like, planting a section." To me, it was just unnecessary to plant a section with his jerseys. Again, it looked cool for the photo. We do everything for social media nowadays. That's another podcast, but,
Mhm.
that was my one bone to pick.
Um, Look, I agree. I mean,
Is that a stupid
I
bone to
no, I
pick?
listen,
I don't know.
I put on makeup for this podcast, like, I'm not wearing makeup at home by myself. So I guess we all do everything for social media. But no,
Right.
I agree, I felt like the whole thing was a little staged, to say the least. I mean, it was legit staged.
Yep.
But it did feel that way, but that is kind of, like, how things are trending, and then the Players Tribune article almost made it seem like, did he know they were gonna do that? Because that would have to be
No, I don't
planned
think
out
so.
that would have to be planned out in advance.
It was, but I don't think it was planned out that far in advance. I think it was, like, a couple days in advance. They just got, like, a bunch of jerseys and put them on the seats.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't
Do you think OG Anunoby is like, "Wow, I didn't get a whole
well, it's
section with
actually
my
interesting
jersey."
you brought it up because OG hasn't returned yet, but Fred did
Right.
a week ago, and I was at that game too, and Fred now you see why I have a hat on. Fred, he didn't play, which ruined a bit of, like, the
Yeah.
fun, but regardless, it was just a way not as good of a video tribute, not as good of a vibe, not as good of a stand. It really did show you what Pascal meant to the franchise. I think a lot of casual fans would think Fred and Pascal are kinda on an even playing field in terms of, like, what they meant and what kind of reception they get, but if you went to both those games, you saw that, like, no disrespect to Fred, who I think has a lot of fans and everyone loves his story, undrafted, whatever,
Mhm.
but Pascal connected with the city in a different way than
Mhm.
Fred, which I think honestly was special, like, just the way that he managed to connect as, like, an immigrant in a city with, like, a huge African population, I
Mhm.
think was huge, and also as, like, this chip on his shoulder, like, underrated, I think, like, Canadians relate in the basketball world, like, underrated, you gotta work twice as hard to get to where you get, and then he, like, gets to a two-time All-NBA player. Really the first homegrown guy we had who got to that status and wanted to stay.
Mhm.
So, it was
Yeah.
definitely you felt that kinda connection there.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference too between being traded and leaving in free agency,
Right,
especially with
right.
fans, right? Like, I feel
Mhm,
like, that leaves a
mhm,
different impression on a fan base as well, but
mhm.
yeah, no, it was great to see him back on Valentine's Day, top 2, like I said. But, yeah, I don't know, I love how much he loves the city and that even though he left, like, a month ago now, or maybe even slightly longer, he's still talking about how much he loves Toronto and how much it means to him, which has to be genuine because you don't do that a month later if it isn't true. Yeah, very random before we go on to our Hottie Highlight of the week. Shout out to Norm Powell. Oh my God. The hit that he took, I was seriously like, I was so concerned. Like I was out that Saturday night and I was like, I just have to put my phone away or I'm gonna worry about him all night. And then I Googled it the next day and that he was okay and he avoided like any, serious injuries. Thank God, because head injuries are always scary. And now he has this massive scar right down his forehead with some sports commentator, I don't recall which broadcast, said chicks dig scars.
Right.
Which is just, I'm sorry, it's a massive eye roll for me because he's Norm Powell and women are going to love him regardless. Not just because he's a basketball player, but he's Norm Powell, all right? Like he doesn't, anyway, it's fine. It's fine. I just want to give him a shout out because, oh my God, that was like one of the worst hits I've ever seen in the NBA. Very random. My heart had to give him a shout out. Okay. This week's Hottie Highlight of the week is going to the 905 organization. And I say this because they just dropped a really awesome Black History Month jersey. I highly recommend you check it out. The 905 isn't associated with this podcast. No one's paying me to do this or anything like that. I just genuinely love this jersey. As well, they created a special jersey for the Lunar New Year, and I really like how this team is connecting with the community. And these jerseys are honestly just awesome. Like they're really, really cool, and I feel like they deserve a special shout out. So they get my Hottie Highlight of the week.
Yeah, no, I love both of the jerseys too. And just to prove that we're not paid out by the 905, I'll criticize them.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
My only like critique is that like I wish there was more marketing that went into some of these games. Like it was Canada Basketball Night there a couple of nights ago where
I didn't even know that.
Exactly, like Victor LaPena and Naira Fields, like a couple of the women who just qualified for the Olympics went, and I didn't know about it until at like 5 p.m. that day. Like there was just nothing about it. And I just wish the 905 like promoted their games a little bit more. Maybe they just don't have the budget for that, but like, yeah, I would have gone to that if I had known. And it was just something that wasn't out there until like a couple like hours before the game. So they are doing good things. They have a good team. They're exciting. They have cool jerseys. My only critique is like tell the fans a little bit in advance what's going on.
Well, you know what? Maybe they should be paying me as part of their marketing. I haven't been to a 905 game yet this year. I need to.
No, me either. I went last year.
I want to say the year before. But regardless, all right, Oren, let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining me this week. For all our listeners, in case they don't already, let us know what you're up to and where they can find you on the internets.
Yeah, I kind of plugged myself at the beginning, but again, you could find me at Twitter at Oren Weisfeld, where I post all my work and any updates for the book I'm writing. But that's about all I'll say for today.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us this week. Happy All-Star Weekend for those who celebrate, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.